My name is Derek, and I just turned 28 last month. For 7 years, I poured my heart into the family construction business, believing that loyalty would eventually earn me a place at the table. But at my parents' 35th anniversary dinner, I learned the brutal truth about where I stood. When they announced a luxury Hawaiian vacation for the family and told me I wasn't invited, something finally broke inside me. Let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button as I share how I finally found the courage to walk away. Growing up as the middle child in the Anderson family was never easy. My father, Robert, built Anderson Construction from nothing, turning it into one of the most respected companies in our county. He was a self-made man who prided himself on his work ethic and business acumen. My mother, Diane, complemented his ambition with her social connections. She came from an upper-middle-class background and knew exactly how to navigate the social waters of our community. Together, they created a successful life and a powerful family image. At the top of our family hierarchy sat my older sister, Lauren. 3 years, my senior Lauren was the epitome of achievement. She had excelled in school, graduated top of her class from an Ivy League university, and became a corporate attorney by 25. Every family gathering featured some new accomplishment of hers. Another big case won, another prestigious client acquired. My parents displayed her law school diploma prominently in the living room, right above the fireplace where no visitor could miss it. Then there was my younger brother Ryan, the baby of the family at 24. What Ryan lacked in Lauren's academic prowess he made up for with natural charisma. He had the kind of magnetic personality that made people instantly like him. After a brief stint in college, he joined a real estate firm and quickly became their top seller. My father called him the natural, and often joked that Ryan could sell ice to Eskimos. His quick success without much effort only highlighted the stark contrast with my own journey. And then there was me stuck in the middle. I wasn't brilliant like Lauren or charming like Ryan. What I had was persistence, reliability, and loyalty, qualities that seemed increasingly undervalued in our family. After high school, I attended a state university and earned a degree in business management. Nothing fancy, but I graduated without debt thanks to working part-time throughout college. When I finished school, my father offered me a position in the family business. Every successful company needs workhorses, he told me on my first day. Lauren has the brains, Ryan has the personality, and you, Derek, you have the dependability. At the time, I took it as a compliment. 7 years later, I realized it was my job description. I was the family workhorse. My role at Anderson Construction began in the office handling paperwork, but I quickly took on additional responsibilities. I learned every aspect of the business from the ground up: accounting, project management, client relations, and even hands-on construction work when we were shorthanded. By my 3rd year, I was effectively running day-to-day operations, while my father focused on business development and strategic planning. Despite my growing responsibilities, my salary remained conspicuously lower than market rate. My father always had reasons. Times are tight. We need to reinvest in the business. Your living expenses are lower than your siblings. Meanwhile, Lauren received an expensive car for passing the bar exam, and Ryan got a significant startup bonus when he sold his first $1 million property. I lived in a modest one-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my parents' suburban mansion. Every Sunday I joined them for family dinner, a tradition my mother insisted upon. These dinners followed a predictable pattern. Lauren would share her latest professional triumph. Ryan would entertain everyone with stories of his high-profile clients, and I would sit quietly as my contributions to the family business went unmentioned. Last Christmas, a particularly profitable year for Anderson Construction, my father announced bonuses for the family. Lauren, who did occasional legal work for the company, received $15,000. Ryan, who had referred 2 clients to us, got $10,000. I received a $1,000 gift card to a department store and a pat on the back. "You already get paid for your work, son," my father explained when he saw my face fall. "This is just a little extra for the holidays." Despite these disappointments, I remained hopeful. 6 months ago, my father mentioned the possibility of making me a partner in the business. "Keep up the good work, and we'll talk about a partnership when you hit your 30-year mark," he said. "Loyalty deserves to be rewarded eventually." That partnership would mean financial security, professional recognition, and finally a seat at the decision-making table. It became my light at the end of the tunnel. I worked longer hours, took on more responsibilities, and even started bringing in new clients. For the first time in years, I felt my efforts might actually lead somewhere. Then came my parents' 35th anniversary and the dinner that would change everything. The invitation to my parents' anniversary celebration arrived 3 weeks in advance, a cream-colored card with gold embossing that screamed my mother's taste for elegant extravagance. Black tie optional, it read. Though everyone in the family knew that optional in Diane Anderson's vocabulary meant absolutely required. The dinner would be held at Le Chateau, the most expensive French restaurant in town where the cheapest entree cost more than I typically spent on groceries for a week. Despite my perpetually tight budget, I was determined to get my parents something meaningful. I spent evenings after work visiting shops looking for the perfect gift. After much deliberation, I found a beautiful vintage photograph of the small craftsman house where they had started their married life, the same house where my father had drafted his first building plans on their kitchen table. I had it professionally restored and framed, spending nearly a month's worth of discretionary income in the process. On the evening of the celebration, I dressed carefully in my only suit, a navy blue ensemble I reserved for client meetings and special occasions. I polished my shoes, selected a conservative tie, and even splurged on a professional haircut 2 days prior. Looking in the mirror, I felt a twinge of pride. I might not have Lauren's natural sophistication or Ryan's effortless style, but I cleaned up decently when the occasion called for it. I arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes early, gift in hand. My mother had mentioned needing help with seating arrangements, and I wanted to make myself useful. The private dining room was already partially decorated with flowers and anniversary banners, and a small table near the entrance displayed framed photos from my parents' wedding day. "Derek, you're early," my mother noted when she saw me, her tone suggesting she wasn't sure if this was a positive development. She wore an elegant silver dress that complemented her carefully maintained figure and professionally colored hair. "Thought you might need some help setting up," I offered. "Everything's under control," she replied, glancing at her watch. "But you can help the staff arrange these name cards." I dutifully placed the name cards at each setting according to my mother's detailed instructions. I noticed my own card positioned at the far end of the table, separated from the rest of the immediate family who were clustered around my parents at the head. I was seated between my elderly great-aunt Patricia and my cousin's new girlfriend whom I had never met, essentially the family equivalent of Siberian exile. Guests began arriving shortly after. My father's business associates came first, followed by neighbors and family friends. Everyone embraced warmly, exchanging compliments and catching up on recent events. My father, imposing in his tailored tuxedo, worked the room like a seasoned politician, making each guest feel specially welcomed. Lauren arrived with her fiancé Thomas, a fellow attorney with a prestigious firm. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than 3 of my monthly paychecks. They made a striking couple, both tall, polished, and radiating success. My parents immediately gravitated toward them, my mother kissing Lauren on both cheeks, while my father shook Thomas's hand enthusiastically. The firm just made her lead counsel on the Westridge merger. I overheard Thomas telling my father, who beamed with pride, youngest attorney to ever get such a position. Ryan arrived fashionably late with his girlfriend Sophia, a former model turned interior designer. He had the uncanny ability to make even formal wear look effortlessly cool. He embraced our parents warmly, presenting them with a small box that I later learned contained first-class tickets to a Broadway show for the following weekend. "Just a little pre-gift," he said with his trademark grin. "The real present comes later." My own greeting from my parents was considerably less enthusiastic. My mother gave me a quick peck on the cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup, while my father offered a perfunctory handshake. "Nice of you to come, son," he said, as though my attendance at this mandatory family function was somehow optional. As guests found their seats, I began to notice snippets of conversation about travel arrangements and accommodations. My Aunt Meredith mentioned something about beachfront views, while my cousin Jack asked Ryan about snorkeling locations. These comments struck me as odd, but I dismissed them as references to some past vacation. Throughout the appetizer course, a sense of anticipation seemed to build among certain family members. There were knowing smiles and cryptic comments about the big surprise. I felt increasingly uneasy, like everyone was in on a secret except me. "Have you finished the brochures yet?" I overheard my mother ask my father in a hushed tone. "All set," he replied. "Hidden under the dessert menus." By the time the main course arrived, my stomach was tied in knots, and it had nothing to do with the exquisitely prepared beef bourguignon on my plate. Something significant was happening, something that involved travel and planning, and somehow I had been left out of the loop entirely. I tried to engage with Great-Aunt Patricia beside me, but her hearing aid was malfunctioning, and most of our conversation consisted of me repeating myself at increasing volumes. On my other side, my cousin's girlfriend Jessica spent the entire meal texting under the table, occasionally looking up to offer a distracted smile. As I pushed food around my plate, I watched my family at the other end of the table. They were animated, joyful, connected. Lauren told a story that made my father throw his head back in laughter. Ryan refilled my mother's wine glass with a graceful gesture. They looked like a magazine spread depicting the perfect American family, except I was missing from the picture both literally and figuratively. The weight of my carefully wrapped gift felt increasingly heavy against my leg. I had been so proud of finding something meaningful, something that connected to their beginnings. Now I wondered if it would seem pitiful compared to whatever my siblings had given them. As the servers cleared the dinner plates, I caught my father checking his watch. He nodded subtly to my mother, who straightened in her seat with anticipation. Whatever announcement they had planned, the moment was approaching. And somehow, I already knew I wasn't going to like it. The servers brought out champagne for a toast as my father stood up, commanding the attention of everyone in the room. He cut an impressive figure at 6'3" tall and distinguished with salt and pepper hair, and the confident posture of a man accustomed to being listened to. He raised his glass and the room fell silent. "Diane and I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate 35 incredible years." Together, he began, his voice warm with emotion. "When we started our journey together in that tiny house on Maple Street, we had nothing but big dreams and each other." My mother gazed up at him adoringly, her hand resting on his arm. They did make a striking couple after all these years. Through hard work and determination, we built not just a business but a family legacy. Nothing means more to us than the bonds we share with each other. Family is everything. It's what we work for, what we sacrifice for, what we live for. Murmurs of approval and affectionate smiles rippled through the audience. I nodded along, feeling a momentary connection to my father's words, despite our complicated relationship. To celebrate this milestone anniversary and the family we've created, Diane and I have a special announcement. His eyes crinkled with excitement. "Under your dessert menus, you'll find a little surprise." There was a flurry of movement as guests reached for the elegant dessert menus in front of them. I did the same, finding a glossy brochure underneath. The cover showed a stunning beachfront resort with palm trees and crystal-clear water. Bold letters across the top read, "Paradise awaits at Turtle Bay Resort, Hawaii." My father continued as everyone examined the brochures. "In exactly 1 month, we're treating our immediate family to a 2-week vacation at this 5-star resort on Oahu's North Shore. A chance to reconnect, celebrate our journey, and create new memories together." Excited gasps and congratulatory remarks filled the room. Lauren clapped her hands together like a delighted child, while Ryan high-fived Thomas across the table. My mother stood up beside my father, her face glowing with enthusiasm. "We've booked the presidential suite for Robert and myself, and luxury oceanfront rooms for Lauren and Thomas and Ryan and Sophia. The resort has a private beach, 5 gourmet restaurants, a world-class spa and golf course designed by Jack Nicklaus himself." As she detailed the amenities and activities they had planned, I flipped through the brochure with growing excitement. A family vacation was exactly what we needed. A chance to spend quality time together away from work pressures and daily routines. Maybe in a relaxed setting, I could finally have meaningful conversations with my parents about my future in the company. "We'll be flying first class, of course," my mother added, "departing on the 15th at 10 in the morning." I looked up smiling. "That sounds amazing. Do we need to take any special vaccines for Hawaii? Or is it just standard precautions?" I asked already, mentally calculating how I would arrange coverage at work for a 2-week absence. The table suddenly went quiet. My father and mother exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Then my father cleared his throat. "Derek," he said, his tone shifting to something cooler, more formal, "you're not part of this trip." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, certain I had misheard. What I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. My mother stepped in, her expression a practiced mask of polite regret. "This is a vacation for our real family, sweetheart. Lauren and Ryan have their significant others, and we want to spend quality time with the people who truly reflect our family values and success." I looked around the table, hoping someone would object to this blatant exclusion. Lauren avoided my gaze, suddenly very interested in her water glass. Ryan at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, though he remained silent. The other guests seemed to be experiencing various degrees of second-hand embarrassment, studying their brochures or glancing at each other awkwardly. "But I am family," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I'm your son." "Of course you are, technically," my father replied, with a dismissive wave of his hand. "But this trip is a celebration of achievement and connection. Lauren is making partner at her firm. Ryan just closed on his first commercial property. These are the kinds of accomplishments that honor our family legacy." "And what about my work?" I asked, a rare spark of anger, giving strength to my words. "I've been running your business operations for years." "You've been doing the job we pay you for," he corrected me, his tone hardening. "That's not an achievement, Derek. That's an employment arrangement." Lauren finally spoke up, though not in my defense. "Don't make this awkward, Derek. Mom and Dad want to celebrate with people who elevate the family name. It's their anniversary gift. They get to decide who comes." I felt heat rising in my face as 30 pairs of eyes watched this humiliation unfold. My uncle, Mike, my father's younger brother, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Robert," he said quietly, "maybe this conversation should happen privately." My father waved him off. "There's nothing to discuss. The arrangements are made. Now who's ready for dessert? The chef has prepared a special anniversary cake." Just like that, I was dismissed. My exclusion announced and then immediately brushed aside as if it were no more significant than a change in the weather forecast. The conversation around the table gradually resumed, though, with a new undercurrent of tension. My great-aunt Patricia, who had apparently turned her hearing aid back on at precisely the wrong moment, patted my hand sympathetically. "Don't worry, dear," she said in what she probably thought was a whisper, but was actually loud enough for half the table to hear. "They didn't invite me either. Too old to look good in their vacation photos, I suppose." I sat frozen, the beautifully wrapped gift, now feeling like a lead weight against my leg. Around me, servers appeared with elegant dessert plates and champagne refills. The celebration continued as if nothing had happened, as if my heart hadn't just been publicly shattered. For the remainder of the dinner, I existed in a strange, dissociative state. I watched myself go through the motions, small forkfuls of cake. I couldn't taste polite nods to conversations. I couldn't hear a manufactured smile that never reached my eyes. Inside, something fundamental was shifting, breaking, reforming. By the time the dinner concluded 2 hours later, I had made a decision that would change the course of my life forever. I remained at the table long after dessert had been served, mechanically lifting my fork to my mouth while tasting nothing. Around me, conversations flowed and laughter erupted, but it all seemed to be happening at a distance, as if I were watching the scene through thick glass. My parents moved around the room accepting congratulations both for their anniversary and their generous gift to the family that apparently didn't include me. The beautiful wrapped package containing my gift remained under my chair. What was the point of giving it now? My thoughtful present, highlighting their humble beginnings, seemed painfully ironic in light of their current values. Uncle Mike made his way to my end of the table, settling into an empty chair beside me. Unlike my father, Mike had chosen a different path in life. He ran a small, independent contracting business, making a modest but comfortable living without the wealth or status my father had accumulated. "That was harsh," he said quietly, keeping his eyes on the celebration across the room. "Your dad always did have a blind spot when it comes to you." I pushed my cake around the plate. "A blind spot implies he doesn't see me." I think he sees me perfectly clearly and finds me lacking. Mike shook his head. Success has warped his perspective. Money, status, achievements, those things weren't always what defined value in our family. Our father, your grandfather, measured a person by their character and reliability. Well, those qualities are clearly out of fashion now, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Don't let this define you, Derek. You're worth more than how they're treating you. Before I could respond, Lauren approached our end of the table. Uncle Mike excused himself with a supportive squeeze to my shoulder. My sister took his vacant seat, her expression, a mixture of annoyance and condescension. You need to pull yourself together, she said without preamble. You're making everyone uncomfortable with your pouting. I'm making people uncomfortable, I asked incredulously. Not Mom and Dad, who just publicly excluded their own son from a family vacation. Lauren sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. Look, you have to understand how these things work. Mom and Dad have certain standards and expectations. This trip is about celebrating success and showing off the best of the Anderson family. And I don't make the cut. You haven't exactly been setting the world on fire, have you? She countered. You work a mediocre job at Dad's company, live in a basic apartment, and have no significant other or achievements to speak of. What exactly would you bring to this vacation except awkwardness? Her words stung precisely because they reflected the family's warped values so perfectly. In their eyes, my loyalty, hard work, and dedication counted for nothing without the external trappings of success. That mediocre job involves running the company that pays for everyone's luxurious lifestyle, I said quietly, including yours. Lauren rolled her eyes. Please, Dad could replace you tomorrow with any business school graduate. Don't overestimate your importance. With that parting shot, she returned to the head of the table where my parents were now opening anniversary gifts from the guests. I watched as they exclaimed over Lauren's present, a weekend at an exclusive vineyard in Napa Valley. Ryan followed with his real gift, a custom oil painting of their wedding photo created by some up-and-coming artist. I couldn't bear to watch anymore. I slipped out without saying goodbye, leaving my gift still wrapped under the chair. The cool night air hit my face as I exited the restaurant, bringing with it a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in years, I saw my family situation with perfect, unfiltered vision. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and racing thoughts. My phone rang several times, calls from Uncle Mike and my cousin Jennifer that I let go to voicemail. I needed space to process what had happened, to understand what it meant for my future. In my apartment, I kicked off my dress shoes and loosened my tie, collapsing onto the couch in the dark. The answering machine blinked with messages, but I ignored it. Instead, I pulled out a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving for a special occasion and poured myself 2 fingers worth. The first sip burned down my throat, matching the fire of humiliation still smoldering in my chest. As I sat there in the darkness, memories of a lifetime of similar slights and dismissals played through my mind like a montage of failure. My father missing my college graduation because Ryan had a high school baseball game. My mother forgetting my birthday 3 years running. The partnership in the company perpetually dangled just out of reach like a carrot on a stick. Around midnight, my cousin Jennifer called again, and this time I picked up. That was brutal, she said without preamble. Everyone was talking about it after you left. Great, I muttered. Public humiliation is always better with an audience. For what it's worth, most people thought Uncle Robert was way out of line. Even Aunt Diane looked uncomfortable after you left. But not uncomfortable enough to change anything, I noted. Jennifer was silent for a moment. What are you going to do? It was a simple question, but it hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. What was I going to do? Continue working for a man who didn't respect me, keep showing up to family events where I was clearly an afterthought, spend another 7 years hoping for recognition that would never come? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. But I know I can't keep doing this. After hanging up, I pulled out a legal pad and began writing, trying to make sense of my thoughts. I listed every instance of favoritism, every broken promise, every moment of disrespect I could remember. By the time I finished, it was nearly 3 in the morning, and I had filled 7 pages with small, angry handwriting. Looking at those pages at the documented evidence of years of mistreatment, something crystallized within me. This wasn't about a vacation to Hawaii. This was about a fundamental lack of respect and appreciation that would never change unless I changed something first. I finally went to bed as dawn was breaking, exhausted but resolute. For the first time in years, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The only question was whether I would find the courage to do it when morning came. I arrived at Anderson Construction at 7:30 the next morning, my usual time. Despite getting barely 3 hours of sleep, I felt strangely alert, as if my senses had been heightened by the previous night's revelations. The office was quiet when I entered, most employees not due until 8. I liked this peaceful hour to organize my day and tackle priority tasks without interruption. My father typically arrived around 9, but today his Mercedes was already in his reserved parking spot when I pulled in. Through the glass walls of his corner office, I could see him on the phone gesturing emphatically as he spoke. He gave no indication that he'd noticed my arrival. I settled at my desk and began reviewing the project timelines for our 3 active construction sites. Everything was on schedule, materials, deliveries confirmed for the week, subcontractor agreements all in order. 7 years of meticulous work systems meant the company ran like a well-oiled machine, a machine I had engineered and maintained piece by piece. At 9:15, my father's assistant Brenda approached my desk with a stack of folders. "Morning, Derek. Your father wants these proposals reviewed and on his desk by noon. He's also scheduled a meeting with the Wellington client at 2 that he'd like you to prepare the presentation for." I accepted the folders with a nod. "Thanks, Brenda. By the way, has he mentioned anything about the management restructuring he talked about last month, the partnership discussion?" Brenda shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my eyes. "I'm not sure what you mean. The only restructuring I've heard about Island." She trailed off suddenly, very interested in straightening her blouse. "Is what, Brenda?" She sighed. "You should really talk to your father about this." "About what specifically?" "About Jason being promoted to operations director," she admitted reluctantly. "The announcement is going out this afternoon." Jason was my cousin on my mother's side, 2 years younger than me, with a freshly minted MBA and 6 months of experience at our company. The position of operations director was essentially what I had been doing for years, without the title or corresponding salary. It was also the logical stepping stone to partnership, the promotion my father had hinted would be mine. "I see," I said quietly. "Thank you for telling me." Brenda hurried away, clearly regretting being the bearer of bad news. I sat motionless at my desk, the folders untouched before me. This, on top of last night's humiliation, was the final confirmation I needed. I would never be valued here, no matter how hard I worked or how loyal I remained. At 11:30, I stood up and walked purposefully toward my father's office. His assistant tried to intercept me, saying he was on an important call, but I walked past her with a polite but firm, "This can't wait, Brenda." My father looked up with irritation as I entered without knocking. He held up one finger in the universal sign for "wait a minute," and continued his conversation about golf tee times. I stood quietly, taking in the luxurious office with its award certificates and family photos. I noticed for the first time that while there were several pictures of Lauren in her graduation robes and Ryan with various sports trophies, there was not a single photo of me. Finally, he ended his call and looked at me expectantly. "This better be important, Derek. I have the Wexler call in 15 minutes. I hear Jason is being promoted to operations director," I said without preamble. My father had the grace to look momentarily uncomfortable before his expression hardened. "That's correct. The announcement goes out today. He's being groomed for eventual partnership. The partnership you suggested might be mine." He waved dismissively. "I said we would discuss it. After consideration, Jason is the better fit. His MBA gives him the theoretical foundation you lack, and frankly, his personality is better suited to client relations. I've been running operations for 5 years without the title or compensation," I pointed out. "I built the systems Jason will now take credit for. You've been doing your job, Derek. That's what we pay you for." My father leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Is that all you came in here for? To complain about a business decision that's already been made?" No, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. I came to give you my resignation effective immediately. For the first time in my adult life, I saw genuine surprise on my father's face. Don't be ridiculous. Where would you go? What would you do? I don't know yet, but I know I won't stay where I'm not valued. He scoffed. This is about the Hawaii trip, isn't it? You're having some sort of tantrum because you weren't invited on vacation. This is about 7 years of loyalty and hard work being treated as worthless. I corrected him. The vacation was just the most public example. You're being overly dramatic. Take the day off if you need to cool down, but this resignation talk is nonsense. You have responsibilities here. I placed my company key card and phone on his desk. Not anymore. You'll find all active projects are documented in the shared drive. Project managers have been briefed on timelines and deliverables. There should be minimal disruption during the transition. My father's face reddened. You can't just walk out. This is your family legacy. A legacy I'm apparently not good enough to be part of, I replied. Isn't that what you and Mom made clear last night? I'm not real family. That's not what we meant, and you know it. The vacation is for people who elevate the family name. I finished for him. I remember your exact words, Dad. They made your priorities crystal clear. He stood up, anger now replacing surprise. If you walk out that door, don't expect to walk back in. I won't tolerate this kind of emotional blackmail. It's not blackmail. It's self-respect, something I should have found years ago. I turned and walked out, feeling his glare on my back, but resisting the urge to look back. In the main office, several employees watched curiously as I went to my desk and began packing my few personal items into a cardboard box. News traveled fast in small companies, and I suspected Brenda had already spread word of my confrontation with the boss. Mark Thompson, our senior project manager who had been with the company for over 20 years, approached as I was emptying my desk drawer. So it's true, he asked quietly. You're leaving? I nodded. Time for a change. Mark glanced around to ensure no one was within earshot. For what it's worth, this place runs because of you, not despite you. Your father's making a mistake. His words offered a small measure of validation, but the decision was made. I finished packing my meager belongings, a coffee mug, a few reference books, a small plant I'd kept alive for 3 years. 7 years of my professional life fit into a single box. There was something both depressing and liberating about that fact. As I headed for the exit, several colleagues stopped me to shake my hand or offer surprised goodbyes. I maintained a professional demeanor, thanking them for their good wishes and promising to stay in touch. Inside, I was experiencing a whirlwind of emotions, fear about my uncertain future, anger at my family's treatment, but predominantly an overwhelming sense of relief. The weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying had suddenly lifted. Back at my apartment, I set the box from work on the kitchen counter and looked around at my modest living space. Everything in it had been selected with careful attention to my limited budget, furniture chosen for durability rather than style, appliances purchased on sale, decorations minimal and practical. For years I had lived as if in a holding pattern, waiting for the partnership that would finally allow me financial freedom. Now I faced a different kind of freedom, the terrifying liberty of having no plan at all. I spent the afternoon updating my resume and researching other construction management opportunities in the area. By evening, my phone was filled with missed calls and text messages, Tupelo, my mother wanting to discuss this foolishness, Ryan asking if I was having some kind of breakdown, Lauren lecturing me about professional suicide. I ignored them all. Instead, I called the one family member who might understand. Uncle Mike answered on the second ring. I heard what happened, he said immediately. Word travels fast when someone finally stands up to Robert Anderson. I quit without another job lined up, I admitted. Probably not my smartest move. Sometimes the right move isn't the smart one, Mike replied. What's your plan now? I honestly don't know. Start looking for positions with other construction firms, I guess. There was a pause before Mike spoke again. I might have a proposition for you. My company just landed the Riverside renovation project. It's small compared to what you're used to, but I could use someone with your experience to help manage it. pay wouldn't match what you were making, at least not initially. Are you offering me a job? More like a temporary collaboration, while you figure out your next move. No pressure either way. I felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected lifeline. I'd be honored to work with you, Uncle Mike. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. The work is hard and the budget is tight, but at least you'll be appreciated for what you bring to the table. After hanging up, I felt a new sense of purpose emerging from the chaos of the day. I had options, skills, and at least one family member who saw my worth. It wasn't much, but it was a starting point. That night I packed a larger bag with clothes and essential items. I couldn't stay in this apartment, not with its proximity to my parents' home and the family business. I needed physical distance to match the emotional boundary I'd finally established. I made arrangements to stay at an extended stay hotel across town near Uncle Mike's office. As I locked my apartment door, leaving most of my possessions behind, I felt like I was closing a chapter of my life that had gone on far too long. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years it felt like it truly belonged to me. The lakeside extended stay was nothing like the luxury Hawaiian resort my family would soon be enjoying, but it served its purpose. A clean room, functional kitchenette, and most importantly, distance from my old life. I paid for 2 weeks up front, figuring that would give me time to sort out more permanent arrangements. My first day at Uncle Mike's contracting business was an education in humility. Anderson Construction occupied a gleaming 3-story building with marble floors and a receptionist who doubled as a barista. Mike's operation, by contrast, consisted of a modest office attached to a warehouse with a small team of dedicated employees who all wore multiple hats. It's not fancy, Mike acknowledged as he showed me around, but we do honest work at fair prices and everyone gets treated with respect. The Riverside project involved renovating a historic building downtown into mixed-use retail and office space. The budget was tight, the timeline aggressive, and the client particular about preserving original architectural elements. It was exactly the kind of complex, detail-oriented project I excelled at managing. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction from my personal turmoil. To my surprise, Mike introduced me to the client as a construction management specialist and gave me significant authority over project decisions. It was more responsibility than my father had ever entrusted to me, despite my years of proven competence. "Why are you giving me this much control?" I asked Mike after the client meeting. "You barely know my work." "I know enough," he replied simply. "Robert may be blind to your talents, but the rest of the family isn't. I've watched you quietly hold that company together for years while he took the credit." During that first week, my phone continued to buzz with messages from family members. My mother's texts evolved from demanding I stop this nonsense immediately to increasingly concerned inquiries about my whereabouts. Ryan sent a surprisingly thoughtful message acknowledging the vacation exclusion was pretty messed up but suggesting I had overreacted. Lauren remained. Lauren sending a single text that read, "Drama was always your specialty. Call Dad when you're ready to apologize." I responded to none of them. The emotional distance felt necessary for my healing process. The work with Uncle Mike proved to be exactly what I needed. Without the suffocating shadow of my father's expectations and disappointment, my natural talents flourished. I implemented streamlined project management systems that improved efficiency, negotiated better terms with suppliers, and developed innovative solutions to structural challenges that arose during demolition. "You're wasted as a project manager," Mike commented one evening as we reviewed updated budget projections that showed we were now coming in under cost. "You should be running your own operation." I laughed off the suggestion, but the seed was planted in my mind. By the end of the second week, word had spread about my availability in the local construction community. A former subcontractor who had started his own business called to pick my brain about operations systems. A client I had worked with at Anderson reached out about a potential project. People in the industry, it seemed, had noticed my contributions even when my family hadn't. The Riverside project continued to progress smoothly under our management. During a site visit in the third week, the client pulled me aside. "Mike tells me you're the one who suggested preserving the original crown molding and replicating it where it was damaged," he said. "It's exactly the touch this building needed." I specifically want you involved in my next project. It was the first time a client had requested me personally, rather than the Anderson Construction name. The validation was both surprising and deeply satisfying. That evening I received an unexpected visitor at my hotel room. Ryan stood outside my door looking uncharacteristically serious. "How did you find me?" I asked, reluctantly letting him in. "Jennifer told me," he admitted. "She's worried about you. We all are." I gestured around the modest hotel room. "As you can see, I'm fine." Ryan sat on the edge of the bed looking uncomfortable. "Mom and Dad left for Hawaii yesterday. Dad's been making Jason handle everything at the office, and apparently it's a total disaster. 3 clients have already called asking specifically for you." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, though I couldn't help feeling a twinge of satisfaction. "Look, I know they treated you badly," Ryan said, running a hand through his hair. "The vacation thing was cruel and I should have said something. But you didn't." "No, I didn't," he acknowledged. "I've been thinking about why. I think I've always been a little intimidated by you, believe it or not." I looked at him in disbelief. "Intimidated by me? You're the golden child. I'm the one who gets by on charm. And luck," he corrected me. "You're the one with actual substance. I've always known that on some level, and I think Dad does too. It's why he's harder on you. He sees himself in you." His words offered a new perspective I hadn't considered, though they didn't excuse my parents' behavior. "What do you want, Ryan? For me to come back and pretend nothing happened?" He shook his head. "Number, I just wanted to make sure you're okay and to tell you I'm sorry for not being a better brother. Whatever you decide to do next, I'd like to be supportive." It wasn't the conversation I had expected, but it was perhaps the most genuine interaction I'd had with my brother in years. After he left, I thought about the family dynamics from this new angle. Perhaps Ryan was right about my father seeing himself in me. The difference was that my grandfather had apparently supported and encouraged my father's drive, while my father had systematically undermined mine. The following week brought another surprise. Uncle Mike called me into his office and closed the door. "I've been thinking about succession planning," he said without preamble. "I'm 60 next year, and while I'm not ready to retire yet, I need to start considering the future of this company." I nodded, unsure where he was going with this. "You've impressed me, Derek. More importantly, you've impressed our clients and staff. I'd like to discuss bringing you on as a partner, with an eye toward eventually taking over when I do decide to step back." The offer left me momentarily speechless. It was everything I had wanted from my father: recognition, opportunity, a genuine seat at the table. "I don't know what to say, Uncle Mike." "Say you'll think about it," he replied. "This isn't a decision to make lightly, but I want you to know the offer is genuine, and it comes with no strings attached. No family politics, no hoops to jump through. Just a straightforward business proposition based on your merit." That night I moved out of the hotel and into a small but comfortable apartment. It was a decisive step away from the temporary limbo I'd been living in, and toward building a new life on my terms. As I arranged my few possessions in the new space, I realized I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Hope. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Jason, my cousin, who had taken my position at Anderson Construction. His message was brief but illuminating. "How did you keep track of everything? This job is impossible. Nothing was documented like your father claimed." I smiled to myself but didn't respond. Let them discover exactly how much I had been doing all these years. Some lessons had to be learned the hard way. 6 months after walking out of Anderson Construction, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. Uncle Mike and I had formalized our partnership agreement, rebranding the company as Anderson Mitchell Contractors to reflect our new joint leadership. The Riverside project had been completed on time and under budget, earning us praise in local business circles and leading to 3 new significant contracts. I had settled into my apartment, gradually creating a home that reflected my own tastes rather than budget constraints. For the first time, I bought furniture because I liked it, not because it was on clearance. I started dating again, meeting a wonderful woman named Allison, who worked as an architect and who valued my straightforward nature and work ethic. My relationship with extended family members had slowly begun to heal. Jennifer and I met regularly for coffee and several cousins had reached out to reconnect. Uncle Mike had become both a mentor and friend, our professional relationship, strengthening our personal bond. Even Ryan and I had established a cautious new connection, meeting occasionally for drinks and gradually building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than family obligation. My parents and Lauren were a different story. Upon returning from Hawaii, they had discovered the extent of my absence, both from the company and from family gatherings. My father had attempted to contact me several times, his messages evolving from angry demands to return to increasingly desperate pleas as Jason proved unable to fill my shoes. I responded to none of them, maintaining the boundary I had established. According to Ryan, the company was struggling without my systems and client relationships. 3 major clients had followed me to Anderson Mitchell, and others were considering making the switch. Jason had resigned after just 3 months, unwilling to shoulder the blame for operational problems he hadn't created. It was late October when my parents made their most direct attempt at reconciliation. My mother left a voicemail inviting me to Thanksgiving dinner at their home, her voice uncharacteristically humble. "We miss you, Derek," she said. "The family isn't complete without you. Please consider coming. Your father and I have done a lot of thinking while you've been gone." I discussed the invitation with Allison, who had become my sounding board for family matters. "Do you want to go?" she asked simply. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to show them I'm doing well without them. Another part still craves their approval, as pathetic as that sounds." "It's not pathetic," she assured me. "They're your parents. But you need to be clear about your boundaries before you go." Her advice was sound. After careful consideration, I decided to attend, but on my own terms. I would bring Allison stay only for dinner rather than the entire day, and leave if the conversation became manipulative or disrespectful. Thanksgiving Day arrived crisp and clear. As Allison and I drove to my parents' house, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and confidence. The man returning to this house was fundamentally different from the one who had left it 6 months ago. My mother answered the door, her expression a combination of relief and apprehension. She had aged subtly in the months since I'd seen her new lines etching the corners of her eyes. "Derek," she said softly, "I'm so glad you came." Her gaze shifted to Allison. "And you brought a guest." "This is Allison," I replied. "My girlfriend." The word still felt new on my tongue, but it brought a quiet joy to say it out loud. Allison extended her hand with a warm smile, and my mother took it after a moment's hesitation. The house was filled with familiar holiday scents and the murmur of family conversations. As we entered the living room, those conversations temporarily halted as everyone registered my presence. Ryan approached immediately, giving me a genuine hug. Lauren remained seated, offering only a tight nod of acknowledgement. My father stood by the fireplace, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. He approached slowly, as if unsure of his welcome. "Son," he said, extending his hand formally, "thank you for coming." I shook his hand, maintaining eye contact. "Thank you for the invitation." The tension in the room was palpable, everyone watching our interaction like spectators at a sporting event. Allison squeezed my arm supportively. Dinner was a surprisingly subdued affair. My mother had prepared all the traditional dishes, and the conversation remained carefully neutral: weather, sports, innocuous community news. It wasn't until dessert was served that my father finally broached the subject of my absence. "Your mother and I have been doing some reflection," he began, setting down his fork. "About the company, about the family, about how we've treated you over the years." I waited, saying nothing. "I've always pushed you harder than your siblings," he continued. "I told myself it was because I saw potential in you, but the truth is more complicated." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "I saw myself in you. The parts of myself I've always been most insecure about. The steady, reliable parts that don't draw attention or acclaim." It was perhaps the most honest thing my father had ever said to me. "I built Anderson Construction to prove my worth to the world," he continued. "But somewhere along the way I started valuing flash over substance. I rewarded Lauren and Ryan for qualities that brought prestige to the family name, while taking your contributions for granted." My mother reached for his hand. "We both did," she added quietly. "We've realized how wrong we were, especially since you've been gone." I looked at them across the table, these people who had shaped me in both positive and negative ways. I needed to leave to find my own worth, I said finally, to discover who I am outside of your expectations and disappointments. And who are you? My father asked, a genuine question rather than a challenge. I'm a skilled construction manager who values honesty, hard work, and treating people with respect. I'm a partner in a growing company built on those principles. I'm someone who finally understands that I deserve to be valued for who I am, not who others want me to be. Lauren, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. So you're never coming back to Anderson Construction after all Dad did for you. I turned to her, no longer intimidated by her judgment. I'm building something of my own now. And for the record, I gave far more to Anderson Construction than I ever received in return. My father nodded slowly. He's right, Lauren. The company has been in chaos without him. 3 project managers can't replace what Derek did single-handedly. It was the validation I had sought for years, but strangely, I found I no longer needed it as desperately as I once had. My sense of worth now came from within, reinforced by the respect I'd earned from clients, colleagues, and my new partner. I'm not coming back, I confirmed, but I am open to rebuilding our family relationship on new terms, terms that include mutual respect. My mother wiped away a tear. That's all we're asking for, a chance to do better. As Allison and I drove home later that evening, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected to find. The hurt hadn't magically disappeared, nor had my parents transformed overnight. But something had shifted. In them, in me, in the dynamic between us. You did well, Allison said, reaching over to take my hand. How do you feel? I considered the question carefully. Lighter, I finally said. Like I've set down a burden I've been carrying my whole life, the need for their approval. The 6 months since that fateful anniversary dinner had taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. True family isn't defined by blood or obligation, but by love, respect, and mutual support. I had found that family in unexpected places, with Uncle Mike, with Allison, with colleagues who valued my contributions, and even with those blood relatives who had made the effort to see me clearly. I no longer needed to be included in a Hawaiian vacation to feel worthy. I had built something more valuable, a life that reflected my own values rather than someone else's expectations. For anyone out there struggling with family dynamics that make you feel less than, remember that your worth isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and build a life that honors who you truly are. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family obligation and self-respect? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve to be valued for exactly who you are.